Welcome everyone. We're going to go ahead and give it another like 20, 30 seconds, let everyone get settled in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right, we're about a minute over, so we will go ahead and get started. I want to say good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Hireology's Healthcare Beat. It's a two-day webinar series focused on sharing tools and insights to help set your healthcare organizations up for success in 2021. So my name is Chris Mercer, and I am the Director of Healthcare Market Growth with Hireology. And over the next 2 days, we'll be hearing from leaders across the space as we look to identify best practices and actionable insights that you can use to help elevate your people operations. So today, we'll be kicking off things with a session from Hireology's CEO, Adam Robinson, where he'll be taking a deeper look into ways to attract healthcare applicants, get a process in place to manage an influx of candidate activity and roster the right professionals all within one unified platform. So we'll then take a quick break before jumping into our panel discussion with some of Hireology's partners, which are Skill Survey, Skill Check, and Clickboarding. And then tomorrow, on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see we'll be hosting Aaron Dunn, who's the SVP of Marketing with Care Academy, for his presentation, The Future of Work, a blueprint for attracting candidates from other industries into home care, which will be followed by a dynamic fireside chat with our own Adam Robinson and Helen Deosun, who's the CEO and co-founder of Care Academy. So with that, I would like to introduce the CEO of Hireology, Adam Robinson. Adam is the co-founder and CEO of Hireology, where he's on a mission to really help businesses succeed by building exceptional teams and workplace culture. He's a nationally recognized keynote speaker. He's the author of The Best Team Wins, Build Your Business Through Predictive Hiring, and also a columnist for Inc. magazine. Adam's a three-time finalist for Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year for 2017, 2018, and 2019, and named a top 25 HR industry game changer by Workforce magazine. Under his leadership, Hireology has ranked number 94 on the Inc. 500 list of America's fastest growing private companies in 2016, and he's been on the Inc. 5000 list over the last 5 years. So Hireology has twice been recognized nationally as a top 50 best workplace by Inc. magazine and a top company culture by Entrepreneur magazine. So Adam graduated from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and received his MBA from DePaul University. He's a member of YPO and the Economic Club of Chicago and lives with his family in Chicago, Illinois. So with that, go ahead and take it away, Adam.
Thanks, Chris, and thank you everyone for being here. It's great to see such a large, robust group tuning in to what I know is one of many Zoom meetings everybody's had this year. So it's great to be here, and I look forward to the discussion and to the programming over the next couple of days. Let's jump right in. As we approach the end of this crazy year, I wanted to level set on where we started from an employment point of view this year. In February of 2020, the U.S. economy experienced the lowest unemployment rate that we had seen since the 1960s. We had been on an unprecedented 10-year employment boom, which I know put a ton of pressure on you in the home care and healthcare business. And we called it back in 2019 that we were living in what we referred to as the applicant economy. And essentially what that means is every able-bodied worker that could work and wanted to work was working. And this meant that attracting individuals into our businesses really any individuals, let alone quality applicants, to open jobs was an ever-present battle. I mean, it was, most agencies' number one issue that they were dealing with. You were on a constant merry-go-round of opening positions, posting job descriptions, vetting candidates, getting them onboarded, and hopefully on the roster quickly, while trying to deliver on the promise of quality care to your clients. And what this meant for you as a business is that competition for talent within our industry was larger than it had ever been before, because we were competing with every other employer across industries for the same pool of talent. There's a real cost to that competition. There are costs in recruiting, such as how, of course, you have to spend on job boards and recruitment marketing and advertising to get people into the top of the funnel, but also costs of how long an open role sits open, right? There is an opportunity cost to unfilled positions on your roster. Those are billable hours or days that you can't ever get back. And ultimately the cost of competing on pay and benefits. So as we all know, it is so much harder to do this in this industry than others, just by nature of the work we do, the pressures on individuals and the competition for talent. I'm sure a lot of you spent the first half of the first quarter this year and in most of 2019 thinking up at night about how you're going to build your pipeline of talent and how you can fill roles as quickly as possible. Now, fast forward to now, and this is a glimpse of what we've all been living with this year. All those employment gains made over the last decade were erased practically overnight. Certain industries are forever changed as a result of the COVID pandemic, none more so than ours. And never in my years did I think we would be living through something like this, married with an economic situation and this new applicant economy that we're all seeing coming out of the effects of COVID-19. More importantly for all of you on this call is that COVID-19 brought with it a myriad of complications that we've had to manage. How do you not only support staff appropriately in order to deliver quality care, but keep everyone safe, your workforce and your customers? One issue, regardless of economic situation, is challenging, but when you add in the safety needs of a global pandemic, it probably felt pretty daunting early on and continues to feel that way right now. And so I just want to say at the top here that we see how hard this has been. And I thank you for taking the time during this crazy time to be here with us today. I know you are signaling your intention to be great at the people's side of your business by tuning in. So I'm thankful for your attendance here today. Let's dig deeper into what those headlines mean. So in April, we saw truly Great Depression era spikes in unemployment, and things look pretty dire. I mean, there were some industries like hospitality, travel, and tourism that were hit hard. We were hit hard, but for very different reasons, right? It's not that our businesses were closed. For many of us, our customers were really apprehensive about letting strangers into the home, caregivers into the home during a period where we really truly did not understand this new emerging disease. While we're not back to 3.4% unemployment, we certainly have made some progress over the summer and fall as we started to reopen some businesses and our customers became more comfortable with the services that we provide, and people were brought back from furloughs. Now, we have a long way to go, and I know the immediate future seems somewhat uncertain for all of us. And that uncertainty is still leading us to have a hard to fill pipeline of talent and continued challenges with delivering quality patient care. So my goal today is to talk about how to navigate this new applicant economy in order to make your day-to-day recruiting tasks easier while you continue to manage through these unprecedented times and while we all set ourselves up for what we hope is a very different and positive 2021. One thing Hireology knows to be true is that whether we're at the 10% unemployment rate we saw over the summer, or the 7% that we've seen this fall, or the 3.25% unemployment we saw before the pandemic, there are always hard to fill roles in this industry. No one knows this more than you. particularly in the home care and post-acute care space. And so knowing this, Hireology decided to put a survey in market to look at what's motivating applicants today in this world affected by COVID-19. And the survey was put in market after COVID-19 hit, so we will see the impact of the pandemic on applicant motivation and sentiment. So in the following slides, what we're going to explore is the job seekers' perception of the healthcare industry, the motivators for their job search, what their applicant journey looks like, and whether or not their new role has met their expectations. And so this is all about data from the job seeker's point of view. And the goal here is to take in what they're saying about their job search and about our industry, and to modify our approach to the market so that it's applicant centric and meets them where they are. So I hope today is that you can learn from today's discussion and leave this webinar with some really solid to-dos to make your hiring process even better. These are unprecedented times, which I'm sure we're all sick of saying or hearing, but it is because of this that my goal is to give you some simple steps to take that you can use to make things easier in your pursuit of building the best possible team. Recruitment in its simplest form is a sales and marketing process. And to reach a target audience, marketers have to take the time to understand the motivators and perception of that audience. And so we wanted to start with, what do healthcare workers think of the industry that they work in? One insight that may surprise some of you is that once someone begins working in our industry, their perception of the job is extremely positive. You likely know some incredibly talented, dedicated, and passionate people, and they are absolutely focused on the care that they're providing. And this data really proves it, despite some of the other statistics surrounding high turnover for certain positions in healthcare. So we have to ask ourselves, how can we lose top talent to other positions when we have such a high rating when these job seekers come into the industry? So what this data tells us is expectations are very high, especially in comparison to some of the other professional service providers and employment choices they have in the market. So this tells me we need to dig deeper to better understand job seekers and how to reach and influence them. So let's take a look at the leading motivators that cause people to move on from their positions in our industry. If they like this industry, why are they leaving or switching positions? And we've talked, a few of you, numerous times on some of these items, but I really wanted to lean in here. The highest rated reasons for employees beginning to look for another job once they're in our industry are, number one, better pay. As indicated by that top bar, at 55% of respondents report that the number one reason that they look for new work is better pay, which is followed very closely by better benefits. The next bar down, second from the top. So pay and benefits, number one and number two, unsurprising. Followed by flexible hours, then more hours. So what we all can understand here is that our workforce is looking for flexibility. They've got to work to make money and live the life that they need to live to take care of their family, their loved ones, themselves, and they want more hours from the agency that they work for. And then finally, no career path is number five at 30% of respondents. Well, a couple of other items to highlight, relative to furloughs from COVID, which coincides with the spikes in the number of applicants and poor culture responses that we will touch on here in a moment. So again, better pay and benefits, number one and number two, followed by hours, flexibility in the schedule, as well as getting more hours from fewer agencies, and then finally career path. All right, so let's take a look at the single largest cause. You guessed it, it is COVID-19, but it isn't exactly something that we can control. So what's interesting here is that most everything else on this chart, totaling over 60%, for top motivators for beginning the job search, is completely within your control. Now, there are a few exceptions, of course. But while we won't review every single item on these charts, I do want to highlight a couple of them. So pay, let's talk about that. Given today's environment, people want to feel safe and secure while performing their jobs now more than ever. So one thing I want to ask, because we've seen agencies start to do things like this, is have you considered offering additional pay for managing COVID positive patients or those with a higher risk of exposure to your staff? Have you considered the message that you're sending by not having this type of a tiered pay program? Employees that are more comfortable with the risk could and should have an opportunity to make more money, while those that are less comfortable with the risk of exposure can opt out. And we see some innovation in agencies offering this kind of a step tier approach to pay based on risk. Either way, if you're taking this type of approach, you are empowering your employees by giving them choice. Another way to look at pay, if you have less flexibility, is how are you communicating the total pay package beyond just an hourly rate? What are those benefits you offer beyond general pay? So said differently, knowing that pay and benefits are number one and number two in the market, what we have to do is take a look at what we're offering. And if we're really locked in place based on financial circumstances or means for our business, we really have to think hard about how we market what's positive about our pay packages to the folks in the market that we're trying to recruit. So if we're unable to compete on pay and benefits, then we have to give somewhere, and that's really the opportunity that comes with flexible hours. So let's be honest, nothing about 2020 has been normal, typical, or usual. And so let's think about how we can be more supportive to our teams and offer additional flexibility in terms of hours and how schedules are constructed. Newer challenges at home pervade. We're all going through it. School closures, for you parents on the call, we've all become homeschooling, quasi-homeschooling professionals. I know we're a lot better at it here than we were in March. But employees that are facing these challenges because of school closures or other COVID-related issues are really feeling the strain right now. And so doing things to meet them halfway will go a long way with keeping them motivated and retained. Show them you value them and show them you understand their motivators by helping them out with flexibility. Flexibility for me need not cost your business money. Flexibility just costs management time. And so if you don't have the opportunity for whatever reason to be innovative on the pay side, being innovative on the flexibility side can provide and accrue real benefit to you as an employer. Career advancement. Offering opportunities for career advancement is another way your organization can be competitive when increasing pay really isn't an option. Opportunities for your team to participate in training or continuing education programs are really fantastic ways to increase employee engagement and satisfaction scores, as evidenced in our data. These in turn can help increase your retention rates. And so if you think about it from the team member's point of view, they're asking themselves every day, what's in it for me in working here beyond just the paycheck? So if we're not offering above market pay, if we're unable to do that, what's in it for them that we can provide that on balance gives them a reason to continue to work for you? Investing in your team in these ways is a surefire way to keep them happy and to keep them with your organization longer. And retention equals patient outcomes, which equals client retention and profitability. And then the final thing I want to touch on here is poor culture. This is a longstanding issue for many organizations in our industry and really all industries. And culture is about intention. Are you intentional about who you are and what the total package is and feeling is in the workplace that you deliver to employees? Furthermore, are you practicing what you preach, and are you leading by example? As leaders within your organization, you truly set the tone for everyone else. And so, one thing I know I'm doing, and I've seen other agencies do here in this pandemic, the leaders at the top are doing their best to set aside time to stay connected to the culture in the business. Now that we're all challenged to see each other face to face, now more than ever, setting that tone pays big dividends, really big dividends in connecting with people, in driving your retention rate. So these are all key things that you have complete control over. So I ask, what are you going to do differently to better your chances of retaining your employees once you've gone through what I know are the painstaking efforts to get them into your organization in the first place? Another question I'll pose to you, looking at this from a recruiting point of view: if you execute against these imperatives to retain talent, how are you communicating that narrative to potential employees? If you're offering competitive pay and benefits, desirable culture, and a more attractive and flexible work schedule, how are you marketing and advertising that? Are you telling that story? Because those are the assets that are going to lead to above market performance on the recruiting side. So I'd recommend that you take a second during today's break or after the webinar to look at your last job description, or to look at your career site, secret shop yourself, secret shop your competitors, and see what kind of story you're telling and they're telling against these key retention areas. Really, what we're doing here is configuring a product, right? A job is a product that we're trying to retail online. And if you could make some quick adjustments today to better retail that position to the market that you're trying to reach, you can really set yourself up for success from a talent pipeline standpoint in 2021. So let's take this even a step further. Here is how those factors make today's applicants decide to apply. As I referenced in the previous slide, we call this the what's in it for me that applicants look for. 1/3 of your candidates are using a career site to learn about your company and really to make a decision about whether or not they should apply. This also holds true for what their career path looks like. It's not a, hey, I want to be highly paid or highly trained caregiver tomorrow, but more of a, if I come to work for you today, what could the next 12 months, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years look like for me as a long-term career prospect? Just providing that simple transparency can go a long way toward getting today's applicants to apply to you versus the other companies that they may be looking at. So speaking of other companies, nearly 40% of applicants do compare you to other businesses when they're looking, and just a few points less than that, 37.7%, look at your reputation online and your employer review ratings. And so, as I said before, have you looked at your career site, your Glassdoor rating, to see how you stack up to other firms competing for potential talent? How are you communicating the what's in it for me? You have so many channels to do this in, but it can make a big difference in how you become an employer of choice versus the alternative. So take a look at the message you're putting out there. Let's take a look at channels. So the message you put out there to recruit or retain around what's in it for me is crucial, but where you put the message and market to drive interest is also critical. You have your story. Where do you tell it? If someone has decided to seek out a new position, where do they start? Well, it should come as no surprise to this group that job seekers, by and large, start at job boards. They are using our day-to-day, the day-to-day habits that consumers use to look for anything, and that's to start online. And so while job boards are definitively driving applicant volume, there is a cost to using that channel exclusively in management time and direct costs. More interestingly, is that personal referrals are used by almost half of today's job applicants. And the cost of this is simply happy current employees, right? So engaged, happy people will refer their friends who tend to be engaged, happy employees. People want to work with people they like. You could have an untapped resource in your employment referral process. Are you setting up to take advantage of this? Now, some of you may be saying, Adam, this is great, but my career site platform and other channels don't look to be in the top used platforms or channels by applicant respondents. Why should I be spending time and money investing in all these other channels when I can just push a button and fling a job on the internet? There are two things to think about when looking at channel optimization. Number one is, what is my current conversion rate? Or said simply, what sources lead to hires? And two, how much time could I be wasting going through unqualified volume? So let's talk about hires. As any good marketer knows, it's more than just the volume of leads that you generate, but rather what channels are actually driving conversion. So while only 4% of applicants come from a career site, nearly 1/3 of all hires in this industry come from that source. And that's huge. So ask the person in charge of your online recruitment marketing efforts. Perhaps that's you, perhaps it's someone running marketing, perhaps it's a dedicated HR professional or recruiter. Ask them if this conversion rate is consistent with what you're seeing. I'm certain that they would kill to have conversion rates like these in other marketing efforts, right? It's not to say that you should only focus your effort on your career site. What I'm saying is that you should bolster this channel, very specifically your career site, as an asset, a marketing asset, and give it the respect it deserves. The focus should not just be on applicant volume, but it should be on the volume of conversions from applicant to hire. So let's talk about the time that goes into only focusing on volume. If you're not optimizing your career site channel based on conversion, how much time could you be wasting running poor quality candidates through the entire interview process? Everyone here today, I'm sure, runs into challenges of not enough time in the day to open jobs, vet new candidates, collect pre-employment information and documents, onboard new people, worry about safety. That's a lot to ask for. So if you're looking at ways to save time, if you could optimize just one source to drive 15% more quality applicants, what would 15% of your time back, or 15% of your time spent reviewing resumes or pre-screening applicants be focused on, right? So the headline here is your career site is a lower volume but very, very high impact applicant channel. And if I'm investing dollars today, I'm investing dollars in that channel. Now, thinking about Facebook or your career site, these platforms are mobile first and built for a mobile audience. Only 20% of respondents in our survey use a desktop in their job search. And fewer than 50% use a laptop, whereas more than half use an iPhone and 1/3 use Android. So if talent is using their smartphone more often in the job search, why aren't we doing more to meet them on this channel in optimizing their mobile job hunting experience? Do you have a process that is optimized to support mobile job search? Are you texting applicants instead of emailing or calling them when they reply? And are you doing it in an FCC compliant manner? Can they easily communicate back and forth with you through this medium? Can they apply to jobs via mobile? Can they navigate your career site easily on a phone? The research proves the importance of this channel. So again, here, I ask that you secret shop yourselves. Get out your phone on the break and try to apply to a job at your own business using a mobile device. And just note the experience and ask yourself, are there things that I can be doing to optimize this experience for job seekers? What's even more important here is what drives an applicant to look for a new job, especially when and how they search. So let's take a look at what competition looks like. This was enlightening for me. Fewer than 50% of the job seekers are applying to 4 jobs or less, right, at a time, right? So it's a 4 or less jobs, and about 30% interview only with one company. So meaning by the time a job seeker has applied to your open position, they've likely already applied at a few other locations as well. And if you're not responding quickly enough and getting applicants through your eval process, then your competition is capitalizing on your lack of follow through in a timely fashion. Because again, a third only interview with one company, and it's almost always the first to respond. So if you're losing out on that talent, what's happening? They're at peak interest. So are you running a tight process and providing a better applicant experience to capture this individual? This is all about quick follow-up. What's even more important is that top talent truly is focused on the right fit. So those job seekers that do eventually become hires really aren't shopping offers. Once they've found a place they want to call home, they've made that decision. That's really where they want to be. So these individuals that are deemed quality applicants really only want to receive an offer from one, maybe two companies, because they're being very intentional about where they want to work and where they're taking the time to vet out their choices. These job seekers are busy, just like you and I. They don't want to spam their resumes all over the place, contrary to what I believe is a prevailing sentiment in this industry. They're really intentional about where they apply, and they really focus on one or two offers. So you can't afford to not make a good first impression with top talent and nurture them throughout the hiring process. The data is really clear here. So if you nurture someone and the process is clear to them from start to finish, it will drive up your acceptance of offers. As is shown on the graph here on your screen, nearly 60% of respondents said a positive hiring experience is what drove them to accept the offer. That's it. Positive recruiting experience led them to accept an offer 6 times out of 10. So we talk a lot about losing out to other businesses because the offer was better or because their benefits program was more flexible. But you can overcome these comparisons very simply if someone just feels good about your company due to your providing a really quality hiring experience. You can create a long and lasting impression of your organization and what you stand for. These are things completely within your control. So some simple questions you can ask about your experience. Number one, how easy was it to learn about my company and the job prior to application? Did I see a boilerplate cut and paste job description, or did I really get a feel for what this company was all about? Did I make the pre-screening process easy and consistent? How well did I communicate with the candidate throughout the process? Did I use mobile or SMS to get through to them, or was I really forcing them to go through an email or phone call process? Once selected, how easy was the process that we use to collect certification or other official or state regulated documentation? Did I enable safe digital arm's length onboarding programs? And was I able to set them up for a great day one experience? So if a positive hiring experience can sway candidates to take a job, think about the impact that a negative experience can have on a candidate. And in today's market, can I afford negative perception? The answer, of course, is no. So let's break this down simply. 53% of respondents to our survey have a negative perception of employers that don't get back to them immediately after they apply. So for every 10 applicants that you take too long to respond to, 5 of them immediately have a negative perception of you as an employer. Now, I know how hard it is to manage the volume of applicants you may be getting or all the different jobs you may have open. And in today's climate of uncertainty, even a quick response of an automated response of thank you for your application, we're in the process of reviewing it and we'll get back to you, can go such a long way. Now, what's shocking to me sometimes, but it happens, is that after we interview people, we don't even get back to them. And so I know it can be challenging and you're jumping through a lot of hoops and running through a large number of applicants to get where you need to be. But that same sentiment applies to replying back to applicants after interviews. Even in a time of unemployment this high, none of us can afford to let process issues or gaps get in the way of creating a positive experience and reputation. It will serve you today, but more importantly, it will help you in the long run as we get back to hopefully a more new normal in 2021. So we're getting close to the end of the research I wanted to present, but I wanted to call out something that gives me hope and gets me excited for the future prospects of employment in this industry. Nearly 50% of survey respondents said that they would hope to stay at their current organization for 3 or more years. Meaning, based on how our workforce feels today, they feel that they're in it for longer than I think we realize. 1 in 2 people wants to stay with you. They've already made the call. I want to stay here. So knowing this, how are you supporting them through the understanding of their motivations that we've outlined previously, in ensuring that they start off with a positive footing. Even more importantly, for the 50% who don't feel like this is a place for them, how can we roll out the red carpet to drive that number even higher? You can be that organization that keeps turnover low while you build your very best team. So thank you very much for all of your time in this brief presentation of research. I know we went through a lot of data now, and I promise to give you some simple takeaways to make the most of now and prepare for 2021. So first, understand today's applicant. What do they want? Where are they spending their time? What is motivating them to look for work? Knowing all that, then, how do you reach them where they are? When do they start their job search? What devices do they use? What sources do they look at? We've covered these here in the presentation. Creating that compelling what's in it for me story for them. Each organization has a unique offering to present. Are you communicating and putting your best foot forward? How does it align with what potential employees are looking for? Is it consistent on every channel? Are you looking at your recruitment marketing as core and critical to part of this process? And finally, deliver a positive experience. There is a reason why a lot of time and money is invested to create processes around caregiving and your customers. It's because it enables you and other healthcare businesses to deliver high quality of care consistently, help you manage costs, and provide great experience. Your recruitment and people operations should be no different. Delivering a positive candidate and employee experience is the factor that will set you apart from other agencies. The good news is that all of this is within your control. And you can have not only positive outcomes on the patient side of your business, but positive outcomes for your team, your culture, and your retention. So I appreciate your time today. And of course, am more than happy to speak with any of you further individually if you want to get in touch. I am looking forward to the panel coming up from the partners that we have here in a bit. And so, Chris, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe out there. And here's to a strong finish to this year and a great 2021. Back to you, Chris.
Thank you, Adam. That was an excellent presentation. What really kind of struck home with me was a lot of that data about motivators that cause employees to start their job search. Whether it's better pay or better benefits, flexible hours or more hours, and really kind of taking the advantage of the opportunity to really communicate the organization's goals of value on why someone should come and work for an organization. So I thought that was great. I also really like the discussion around channel optimization. So really, looking at where your high quality candidates are actually coming from, and making sure that you are making that investment to make that a more robust location, whether it's career site or otherwise. And the last area is more about that mobile first strategy. A lot of these are field employees as what they're currently doing, and being able to meet them where they are is so powerful. So I really appreciate that and that communication, that data that you back that up with. So what we'll do next is we're going to go ahead and take a quick 2-minute break. It is about 1:38 right now, so we'll go ahead and do it about like 1:40, close to 1:41, and we'll go ahead and resume here. So everyone go ahead and take a break, and we'll see you back in just a moment. All right, we'll go ahead and get started again. So welcome back, everyone. We're going to go ahead and just jump right into our panel discussion. Today, we're joined by four of our wonderful partners. I'd first like to introduce Tracey Azer. Tracey is Skills Survey's Vice President of Alliances and has more than 17 years of experience in human capital management and HR technology, including over 10 years working in channel alliances and partnerships at salary.com, Connexa, and recently IBM Watson Talent's worldwide channel leader. Tracey has built out long-standing relationships in the HR technology community and continues to evolve with them. She's a graduate of the University of Massachusetts Amherst and certified Dale Carnegie Public Speaking. So welcome, Tracey. Next, we have Danielle Balow, the Senior Solutions Manager at Clickboarding. In her unique role, Danielle evaluates client goals and collaborates with them to present solutions that meet their needs both today and tomorrow. She works with them long-term from implementation through their entire journey to ensure immediate and ongoing success by offering continued improvement opportunities. So welcome, Danielle. Next, we have Michael McKenna. He's a PhD from SkillCheck. Michael is an assessment and research consultant at SkillCheck, which is part of Symphony Talent. He leads all product innovation and oversees the maintenance and development of Symphony Talent's catalog of over 500 assessments. Michael earned his PhD from the University of Missouri, St. Louis, and has been working in the assessment industry for more than 6 years now. So welcome, Michael. And finally, we're joined by Polk, also from SkillCheck. Kara is an assessment consultant at SkillCheck, which is also part of Symphony Talent. She is an industrial and organizational psychologist with experience in multinational organization, client care, management coaching, validations, and adverse impact and data analysis. So welcome, Kara, and welcome, panelists. Really looking forward to today's discussion. And with that, we'll go ahead and just dive right in. So it really is no mystery that 2020 has been a very challenging year for everyone. So to really get us started, I'd like to hear from all of you more about what monumental changes you've seen in your respective areas, whether it's about, future of work, healthcare staffing as a whole, or just how the pandemic has impacted you and your clients at SkillCheck, Skills Survey, and Clickboarding. So Kara, why don't you go ahead and kick us off?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. One big thing we've definitely seen from our clients, specifically in the assessment space, is looking to go more remote. They're doing a lot more of unproctored testing, moving away from assessment centers, since unfortunately that hasn't been something they've been able to do. So they're still able to have that high predictive validity, but they're focusing more on doing it remotely, which has been great for them, right? It's just an adjustment. But they're still seeing a lot of really good prediction of future performance, which has been great. And we also have some moving more towards doing virtual interviews, which has been different. But the beauty of that as well is it always provides cost and time savings for clients too.
Excellent, thank you. Tracey, how about you?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Chris. So a big thing that we have seen pivoting is the theme of today is the remote worker. And it's something that we really didn't take into account with before COVID. And so what we've done is through our reference surveys, we've actually defined a competency of better understanding, well, what does it take to be a remote worker? Because there is a skill set that you need to not have that supervision, not be in the workforce. And so what we've done is we've woven in the ability to better understand, will they be a good remote worker? And there are some characteristics such as the ability to work independently, manage their time effectively, ability to communicate and collaborate with others, tech savvy, right? They have to now figure out their computers and be their own IT director. And then also being self-motivated, take the initiative. And so I think when we think about a remote worker, that's one thing that we want to really think about, will they be a good remote worker?
Yeah, no, that's great. That's definitely some good and salient points right there. Danielle, how about you?
Yeah, so similar to what Tracey and Kara said, what I would say is that this is really a forced event. right? So nobody had a choice really. So when we have to think about, the employee experience, we have to think about it differently. And what I think the silver lining here though is that by using digital platforms, organizations are now able to elevate their employee experience and design their own guided experience and really make it consistent every time, right? So whether it's you interviewing and hiring me or somebody else, it's a similar experience that you get to brand and really make it a great experience for all of your employees. But it's now like, okay, how do I do that, right? Because everybody has to. So that's probably one of the biggest challenges we've seen at Clipboarding.
Yeah, absolutely. And Michael, we'll round things out with you.
Yeah, well, my sentiment actually aligns with the rest of the panelists. And I think that the biggest challenge or the biggest change that we've seen, especially in the assessment industry, is the way organizations are having to interview, right? That's a very standard way to assess candidates, and it's something candidates expect, even though they may not enjoy it all that much. But the way that we've typically interviewed has been, changed and forced to be different. And so I don't think many people in the industry were prepared for that. And so we're seeing now a lot of vendors really try to come to market with these, virtual on-demand or technologically based interviews. And I think that's one of the more interesting changes that we've seen in our industry. And I'm interested to see how it carries out, as the pandemic subsides and we get back to, the new normal.
Yeah, absolutely. And even drawing from what Adam just said, meeting them where they are is so important. So really, really great points there. And that really does segue nicely into our next topic. So really the pandemic has forced so many businesses to adopt new technologies, obviously much faster than originally planned. Really, and that's to help, make sure that they can run more smoothly. And I say this now, even as all of us have fully embraced new technologies, using stuff like Zoom and, having the ability to host this whole event virtually. So how are all of you seeing healthcare organizations specifically, further embracing technology to connect with their staff to really help everyone work smarter? Danielle, why don't we kick it off with you this time?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity to do that, right? So it can be from getting the documentation you need. So maybe if you're hiring an RN or, a doctor or a care worker, are we getting the licensing information and some of those pre-qualifying documents collected up front? Or is it, how are we collecting that information and then sending it to a downstream human resources information system? So in terms of working smarter, it's about eliminating data entry and redundancy, not only from your candidate perspective, but also from the HR or the ops perspective. So there's really kind of two sides to that coin. But I think that those are definitely some trends that we've started to see more specifically in the healthcare industry.
Nice, excellent. Kara, what about you?
Yeah, kind of similar to Danielle, we see a lot of streamlining in the assessment space. So making sure that you have the most efficient process possible, which is also something you saw in the data shared earlier today. You want to make sure you're maximizing that candidate experience, especially because there's so much competition for talent, especially in healthcare, since we have frontline workers. So we see a lot of that. And then we also see a lot of organizations trying to make sure that they have a balance of assessments. So they're focusing maybe not just on the skills required for success, but also different behavioral tendencies that set them up for success in their roles. So we do have, for example, healthcare profiles that we focus on that are more personality based, that help healthcare organizations to really identify candidates that can still maximize patient care, but are going to be attuned to details and can be flexible, especially in this ever-changing environment that we're seeing due to COVID.
Nice. Excellent. Well, thank you for that. Tracey, what do you got for us?
Yeah, so great question. When you think about how our healthcare embracing technology, I have like maybe a little different spin is it's healthcare, but it's also the employees there that they may get burnt out from all the technology. And so you really want to focus on employee engagement, really gaining a better perspective on, how can you learn from your employees? Are they getting burnt out? Getting that intel, that insight data into them to better understand how can I pivot in my organization? What are the employees saying so that I know that it's not too much or too fast or too much of a change.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I could never see getting burned out on all these Zoom meetings, Michael, what do you got for us?
I would say the level of automation in the assessment industry has changed drastically just in the past 8 months. I brought up interviews already, and I think that that's a really good example where a lot of vendors and a lot of organizations are looking to try to minimize recruiters, tasks, all the things that they have to do. And, a lot of platforms that are coming out in terms of like interviews where they allow the interview or the recruiters to send an interview to 8 different people, that makes it something they don't have to join. It's asynchronous and saves them a little bit of time. And then even on the back end, some vendors are offering automated scoring to kind of jumpstart that rating process for recruiters to save them a little bit more time. And so I think technology has really made it, the assessment process a little bit smarter in a lot of key ways that we really hadn't done in a long time. So it's been pretty interesting to see this advancement of the technology available to vendors who, big or small, have access to these kinds of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And just kind of tying and rounding things out there for everyone. So I like that. So, these are all really good insights, and I love all of your different perspectives and approaches as we're kind of taking on and tackling a lot of these challenges. So now I want to kind of change things up a little bit, kind of discuss a topic that always seems to come up. And Tracey, you mentioned it a little bit there, but we seem to always have these conversations, especially within healthcare, that have to do with turnover. So turnover obviously has always been an issue in this industry, and it's something that we've always had to face or try to mitigate or alleviate. But 2020 decided to kick things up a notch and really added a new wrinkle, in that being COVID-19. So as we look at safety and quarantine measures as they were necessitated by the pandemic, they bring on extra burdens on employees. Obviously when you're working in person, or if you're a lot of the frontline workers, especially here in the healthcare space, kind of keeping that in mind, what should organizations be doing to combat turnover? And, are there other engagement tactics that we should all focus on? Danielle, why don't you kick us off here?
Yeah, thanks. Well, one thing that really kind of struck when you were just speaking a second ago is combat turnover, and it's about getting in front of it, right? So it's sometimes what clipboarding refers to as regrettable attrition. So we really try to offer those materials and opportunities to provide the expertise and advice to truly make an impact before it's too late. So of course we want to know how things are going, but how are you communicating and connecting with your staff to make it great all the way from before day one and beyond, right? So it's thinking about the employee experience, making it a great, easy experience, especially in a digital world. So, who's my boss and who's my team? How do I log in on my first day if I'm fully remote? Or, what materials am I going to get? How are you approaching COVID? So all of those things are super important, only, before day one and all the way beyond. So it's really about, I think, trying to get in front of it and provide the opportunities and mediums to do so.
Yeah, and I really like the term that you use there, regrettable turnover, and not just kind of using that umbrella term for all turnover, because obviously you can kind of put those into buckets, and learning how to combat each and every type of turnover is obviously very important within this. So Tracey, I see you nodding your head there, so kind of eagerly waiting to chime in. What do you think of this?
Danielle, you made some good points that got me thinking. What I would say is almost combating turnover before you even hire the person, right? So you want to make sure that you're hiring the right person, as we always hope and pray that we are, but let's get some scientific behind it, right? We're all of the mindset of that. And so for us, what you want to do is really make sure that whenever you are evaluating an individual, whether it be through an assessment or a reference check or whatever platform that you're evaluating them, see if you have pause in the information that you're gathering. And that pause can give you the ability to better understand, should I hire them or should I not hire them? And at Skill Survey, we actually are shown to have a 35% reduction in turnover because of that pause. And I think that's pretty instrumental in combating turnover, is actually not making that higher.
Yeah, no, awesome. That's awesome. Really great to hear. So obviously very, very great points. And, I think that those items often do get overlooked, so I'm happy that both of you, share those insights around this area. Why don't we, jump into, another challenge that obviously our audience faces, kind of throughout, especially, more so now, but just finances in general. So, how they affect, hiring, recruitment, onboarding, and all of those decisions that go with it. So obviously some costs are a little more easy to identify, such as overspending on recruitment marketing channels and not really getting much in return. Whereas other costs, such as wasting time on unqualified applicants, any lost productivity to open roles not being filled, or even hiring, the wrong employee who inevitably leaves, down the line. All of those are all like more hidden costs and obviously very difficult to quantify. But they can add up very quickly. And if you're trying to stay competitive in today's hiring market, a lot of those mounting costs put our clients at a severe disadvantage. So how do you recommend organizations avoid these costly mistakes? Michael, I don't think I've called on you first yet, so I want to give you a chance to go ahead and give some best recommendations before they all get taken. So why don't you kick us off here?
Well, I appreciate that, Chris. There's a lot that you can do, a lot of different approaches you can take to try to mitigate some of these issues. And I think from our standpoint, we always, at a foundational level, want to focus on the competencies that are important for the role, right? So you want to make sure that the people who are going through your recruiting process have the qualities, the competencies, the characteristics that are important to that role. And then aside from that, you want to make sure that they have a good fit, right? So it's not just about can they do the job, but like we've been discussing, do they have the characteristics, the right type of fit with what the role is actually asking with your organization? Are they going to be comfortable in those types of roles with those types of maybe regulations or restrictions that might be in place, especially as we're in the midst of this pandemic, when things are extremely important that rules are followed and guidelines are in place. You want to make sure that the people who you're bringing in are going to be comfortable with that and that level of responsibility. So I think that's a big foundation for us, is to make sure that you have the right skills, but also the right level of fit with that role in the organization. And then from a turnover perspective, I think Adam had a good point about, flexibility and job hours and pay being really key points as to why people start to look for new roles. And from there, we've kind of already mentioned it, that getting ahead of it is really important. And so what we tend to suggest is something like a realistic job preview, where you give candidates a realistic preview of what the job actually entails. So you might talk about the positives, things that you think candidates are going to be interested in, and then the negatives, things that might not be so desirable to them, but to ensure that they have a clear expectation of the role, because that's what's going to hurt you when they get into the role and find out that isn't what the role isn't as they expected. So clearly communicating that up front can be super impactful, and there's a lot of different ways that you can go about doing that.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think that's so important, is one, having your job description out there, right, can only get you so far, but having a realistic view of what is entailed in that job, and then making sure that they are fit at the end of the day. Like that's, obviously really hard to measure by, reading a piece of paper. So I like that. That's actually really great, being able to give them a good preview of that. Kara, why don't you give us your thoughts on that?
Yeah, of course. I completely agree with Michael. Definitely, I want to echo that. That so much of it is the process you put into place, right? And streamlining that. And I know we mentioned that some earlier too, but practically what that can look like is we definitely recommend for people to consider using assessments early in the process, because it's a way to gather data about the candidate's potential performance in that role early without necessarily having to put them face to face with a recruiter yet. So it saves your recruiters time, it saves them money, and it helps them to make heavily data-informed decisions based on the candidates. But another part of that streamlining process, so one, we want to make sure the recruiters have a good experience. We want to maximize their time, but two, we also want to think about it from the candidate perspective. And that's something, of course, Adam touched on. So a way practically you can do that through your selection process is making sure that you're picking selection tools that maximize that candidate experience, that they're efficient, but they're still providing full coverage for measuring those skills and characteristics well, right? You don't want to have a short assessment, but not be able to actually say if someone has the skills required. So it's kind of a balance. That's definitely something to check for whenever you're selecting these products. But you also want to make sure that they're engaged with whatever platform they're using. So you'll see things, for example, like we're putting out different personality assessments that focus on being more of a card, like you check yes or no for questions. It uses this really unique scoring algorithm that cuts down on time, but it helps candidates to stay engaged. So instead of being a personality assessment that helps you identify fit that takes maybe 30 minutes to 50 minutes, it can be cut down to 10 to 15. And that's also going to help you maximize your pipeline. You're not going to lose out on talent because your process is so clunky, and they're going to be more likely to want to pursue employment. So there's a lot of research behind people's likelihood of wanting to pursue employment with an organization based on the process you have in place. And if you have a really good selection process that's engaging, but also appears face valid, meaning they can see how it relates to the job, you're actually more likely to see candidates want to pursue employment with your organization. So instead of you maybe only having a couple at the end of your pipeline that you can choose from, and maybe they've already ended up selecting a different job, you're more likely to broaden that pool, and you kind of get to be more of the chooser in this mutual selection process.
Yeah, wow, that's great. I love all those points, and making sure that we include these things much earlier in that process, because we don't want to get down the line to then have this kind of come up as an issue at the very end. So, very, very good. Let's see. How about Tracey? You got anything for us here?
I do. I echo Kara and Michael. So us too, we have definitely kind of switched gears in saying, take a reference check earlier, because it's the time, the resources that go into this. And we understand that there is a burden on the candidate to do all this, but in the long run, we feel that it will save not only the organization money, but the time and effort that it needs. So we definitely echo that. Also think about, other ways just to try and see that if you could cut down on costs. I really like what Adam said about gaining candidates from the career sites. I mean, there's many ways to gain candidates, and that's another way to cut down on costs where you're not having to pay agency fees. We too feel that gaining candidates through references, through sourcing our references, who are filling out the references, is a nice way to fill that high quality passive candidate funnel. So I think you have to be creative and think about different ways of doing things. It's not always the same way every time. You may have to seek out things early in the process, or seek different areas to save money. So I think those are some good ways to save on costs.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Danielle, what you got for us?
Yeah, I mean, echoing what everybody else said, but one thing that Michael mentioned is, engagement, right? And so once you've gotten to the point where you really want to move this candidate through the next stage in the interview process, remember that they're interviewing you too. And you may want to find ways to showcase what makes you unique. We see a lot of clients of ours create videos where they interview employees at an organization or within a department. Showcase that early. And, there's no reason why you can't talk about that and create a positive brand for yourself, even if for some reason you decide not to go with them or vice versa. But think about how you're engaging in the interview process, and set those expectations so that you're already molding that experience and they know what to expect before they even get there. Or it may help them, change who they want to go with, right? What if they have multiple offers on the table? So I think that engagement piece is super huge.
Yeah, and that's a brilliant point. I mean, it's something that we do lose sight of. I mean, at the end of the day, like, obviously we're evaluating all these folks, but they're evaluating us too. And I mean, that's so important to make sure that we are engaging and making sure that we are kind of meeting them in that area as well. So so I want to kind of dig deeper into that as we're kind of looking at some of these things. So I'm going to stick with you, Danielle, on this one. So how can like some of the selection process help to minimize those dropout rates? Like obviously if they're interviewing you as well, like how do we kind of help to mitigate some of those issues?
Yeah, I mean, one of the ways to do it right is speak their language or use the tools that they're using. So we were talking about the mobile experience when Adam was talking, and he said something like 53% of people search for jobs on their mobile device. So text them, email them, make it a mobile digital experience that they can literally do while they're, making coffee in the morning for their kids or their spouse or whatever, right? So I think that's a huge differentiator. And again, just provide the platform for them to ask questions and engage with you, with the hiring team. Who are they joining? Will they have a mentor? What's the organization's stance on career development? Like these are all huge things that can help tip the scales, but also just set it apart, because if you have a really cool experience, you go through some great assessments and it's like right here on your mobile device. I mean, I don't know if there's anybody even in the crowd right now that doesn't have their cell phone like right next to them, right? So just really speak their language. Yep. And oh, there goes Tracey. Yeah, she's got it too. So just speak their language and use the tools that are relevant, and make it a great experience every time. You can really make it consistent and great if you're using those tools.
Yeah, no, fantastic. How about Michael?
Yeah, I totally agree with Danielle that it's bringing what you need them to do to them. So from an assessment perspective, most assessments you expect them, or for the longest time, have been developed for, desktop. And so trying to redo or rethink how we deliver and administer our assessments has really been at the forefront of a lot of the things that we've done over the past few years. So because if you're having, like Danielle said, if you're having 50 some odd % of people do their entire job search on their mobile phone, and then you expect them to hop on a computer to do a test, you're not bringing to them where they are. And so allowing them to do that, even if they don't take the opportunity to do so, allowing them the opportunity is going to increase your applicant pool and really widen the reach that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Kara, what do you got for us?
Yeah, I'm definitely in agreement with Danielle and Michael, right? A lot of it is maximizing that process, making sure you're meeting the candidate where they're at. Other ways you can do that is by picking products that still have a high touch feel, even though it's digital. I think that's especially important during COVID. We see that a lot with the interview too, since it's less familiar for a lot of applicants. And so finding a product that still makes them feel like they might be interacting with someone from the company, even though it could be asynchronous, is really important. So we see that through, for example, ours leverages a chat bot so they can feel like they're chatting with someone, which I know if anyone's like me and has been doing their online Christmas shopping, we're really familiar with that kind of a format. And so it kind of meets them where they're at in that respect. How do they, it's something that's familiar and makes something that's a little less familiar more comfortable. And so making sure you're doing that. And of course, just sharing with them what the process will look like and what's expected for them. And that can definitely make it a lot simpler, especially since so much of this process has changed this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that point about the human touch on things. Tracey, hopefully all the good answers haven't been stolen. So.
They have. They've been very good. For us, when we think about automation and drop-off rates, a lot of times we think about, believe it or not, phone. A lot of people still use the phone in the interview process. Phone doing reference checks, phone doing calls, phone doing just any type of engagement. And sometimes that can delay the process. In particular for reference checks, it can delay the process because think about healthcare workers. They're out and about, they're doing their job. They may have their phone on them, but they may not want to take a call because they're in the middle with a patient. And so for us, we've digitized this and made it seamless, 24/7. You can do it anytime. And it allows the process to be quicker, faster, and more nimble. And I think in this time, that's what people need. They just need this quick turnaround. They need the I hate to say this, get the body in there, get it going, get it, get people where they need to be and move it along. And so for that, it goes along with the digital. It's just streamlining your process and digitizing it.
Absolutely, yeah, and just like the common theme of meeting them where they are. I love that. So kind of as we were going through some things there, another question kind of popped to mind. So I think this is more along the lines of what Kara and Michael were saying, but how might organizations leverage some of those pre-employment testing assessments to really enhance their job pursuit intentions?
Yeah, I can jump in here. I may have given a lot of my response away already, but it's always worth, in my opinion, talking about more. So I think, again, it's just making sure you have a good fit for your process, making sure it's efficient too. So are you capturing those knowledge, skills, and abilities required for success early? And then make sure you do it efficiently. So if there's no need for additional assessments, we definitely always encourage clients to kind of keep it short and sweet as much as possible, just to make sure that you're making the process as easy and simple for the candidate, while still, of course, maximizing your ability to predict future performance on the job. So it's really that balancing act. And that's something we always encourage clients to consider, just really breaking down the job and its requirements, and then selecting products based on that to encourage those job pursuit intentions. And of course, that's in addition to what we've all discussed of making sure the products are engaging, that they're efficient, and that if possible, they have a high touch feel, even if they can't be in person any longer.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that. Michael, anything to add there?
No, I think she did really well, kind of pulling that apart a little bit more. But one other thing is thinking about the process more holistically. So typically, especially with a lot of the clients we work with, they have their recruitment process, they have their assessment process, and they merge and they have a lot of overlap, but they don't think about them holistically. And so my suggestion is always think about how this is going to look from initial job search to hire to a candidate. And is there disconnect between your recruitment process and then they get into an assessment that looks or feels drastically different for whatever reason? So really focusing on the entire process holistically is really going to have a positive, lead the candidate to a positive perception. And as we saw, it's going to have lead to more likelihood that they're going to accept a job if offered.
Absolutely. No, thank you for that, you two. As we kind of talk about balance and kind of trying to walk that fine, not lengthening the entire hiring process to making sure that we're getting enough information as we kind of move through that. Want to focus more on kind of looking at kind of the ever-present constraint of time. So it's obviously the only non-renewable resource that only seems to get more and more scarce. So how might organizations leverage some of that testing to enhance that pursuit? But like, what is the balance? I mean, is there a way to kind of finely tune like what might be like a good length of time for some of these? I know, as you mentioned, Kara, some of these can be 30 to 50 minutes, and obviously kind of paring it down to 10 minutes. But then like, how many assessments do you want to have? Kind of feel free to jump in here, within tackling that. But I guess as we look at time, what's a good balance to kind of strike within that?
I don't know that there's a like golden rule for time. I do think it's a product of the role and the amount, the recruitment pool, the applicant pool that you have access to. And it also comes down to the job itself. If it's a high stress or has a lot of responsibility, you don't want a 10 to 15 minute, assessment process. So I think it's thinking through all of those different points and then deciding what is going to be best for us or what's going to make the most sense. And then you can try it out. If for, you're not seeing people finishing your assessment process for whatever reason, maybe it's time to reevaluate. And so I do think unfortunately, I don't have a good answer for you, Chris, but I do think it is a little bit of, it kind of depends. But Kara, I don't know if you have a better take on it.
No, I totally agree with you. It's definitely role dependent. That's always something we like to consider and have clients consider as well. Like Michael mentioned, if you're going for maybe more of a management level role or a higher up role, you would probably consider having a lengthier process. And typically candidates that are more mature in their careers are also more invested in the process. They're making more thoughtful movements from jobs, things like that. But you do see that entry level, we might consider a more efficient process. But speaking of time, also from the recruiter's perspective, again, we definitely want to think through how do you have the most data early on without having to lift a finger. And that's really where you see a lot of values, because recruiters unfortunately have a lot of time constraints. Like you mentioned, Chris, it's that non-renewable resource. And especially in times with COVID, where you probably aren't able to hire more people for recruitment, but you're having more hiring needs, it's really essential to have that efficient process. And to also make sure that it's connected within your current framework well, so that you can efficiently navigate all these software and have your data handy to make these decisions. So that's definitely something we like to walk through and discuss with clients as well.
Sure, absolutely. Tracey, you see you nodding your head over there. You got anything for us?
I do. It kind of ties back to the pre-employment testing that you were talking about. One thing I would say is, with any type of pre-employment test, I would say, see if it's EEOC compliant. We're talking a lot about diversity and inclusion. And when you are able to have, in particular, a reference test that eliminates any bias, so that you or the individual can go ahead and pursue any job they want without bias, I think it has a big impact on an organization. The person wants to have that fair and equitable chance at a role. They're just seeing a lot of success in diverse organizations, and I think really that ties to the pre-employment test that you can take to eliminate any exclusion.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. I did have a question that came in the Q&A that I thought was really interesting, so I'm going to go ahead and read this from one of our attendees, and it said, our biggest frustration is when we do our due diligence, hire a caregiver, speak to them and assign them on a case. The case starts the following day, and then they don't show up to the case. All the references came back well. Caregiver sets the tone, answers the questions, that they're reliable and that they're meeting the needs for the hours in the schedule. So for this specific attendee, it's, how do we improve our process to avoid this type of situation? We've tried to improve our questions to help weed some of those out, but inevitably this has happened, quite a bit more given the pandemic. So kind of just wanted to float that out there to all of you on any takes there.
Yeah, I can jump on that one. A big thing we consider, especially if you're struggling with no-shows, is looking at their behavioral tendencies in the workplace. So we definitely encourage you to consider how conscientious are they, how likely are they to be organized and present. And that's something that can be really predictive of people showing up to a job, consistently showing up, and also performance itself on the job. So when you're looking at that, we would kind of consider this more of a softer skill, and definitely something we recommend for clients to consider and to look at testing early, just to help make sure you minimize those no-shows, because that's a huge cost, right? You've paid for them to go through the entire process, but you're not seeing them showing up on the job, and you're going to have to go through that process again. So I think that's a big one.
I think too, sometimes you might want to ask why. Like, you could automate, right? And say like, hey, you didn't come to work. Is there a reason why? So if it's not evident, right, and you're going through all of the screening and the assessments, and you feel like that's really solid, then something's missing. And if you can't put your finger on it, you could try to solicit the feedback. Now, you'd want to be thoughtful and strategic in how you do that, But you know, it's nothing better than getting that answer from somebody that you wanted to come work for you, right? And for some reason they didn't. So if you have the opportunity to just have a really candid kind of one-on-one really quick, even a text, right? Or a quick email, that could potentially help.
Yeah, and I would say for references, our whole motto is past performance is predictive of future success. And so if they have done this in the past, then you're going to identify that. They're not going to be successful in the future. And so, you know, finding out good quality references, whether it be from their manager, current manager, past manager, finding out really what they have done in the past to make sure that you're hiring appropriately. That has always been the key to success.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And Tracey, you kind of brought up a point on some things that I've heard from some clients in the past. So, you know, with the types of reference checks that you run, you know, how are those, you know, different from me calling, you know, a couple of those folks just right off the bat saying, okay, they gave me a couple of references. So how would you kind of like say that your structure is a little bit different to help, you know, bring some of these things up?
Yeah, I think especially in the healthcare space, I know Chris, you and I had just had a nice discussion about this in the home health space. You know, I think when you think about tailoring your questions, you really want to tailor it to your clientele, your candidates who you're bringing on. We do have scientific surveys that right off the bat, you can use our surveys that are assigned to CNAs or home health aides or, you know, whatever role that you are looking for. Sometimes you want to be flexible with that. And so we do have that option where you can come up with customized surveys. Maybe you only want to ask 5 specific questions and that's it. You know, one could be, have they showed up on time? Right? And that could be a problem solver to the prior question. And so you really want to have a solution that is flexible to you as an organization and flexible to the roles that you are trying to gain employment for. And so that's what you want to look for.
Sure, absolutely. So kind of one other area I wanted to touch on. So, you know, obviously going through, you know, the reference check, some of these assessments early on. Danielle, can you share a little bit with us about how the onboarding process may help to kind of affect some of this? So obviously they said they hire someone, they start the next day. Is there anything that can be done differently through that onboarding process to help mitigate some of these issues?
Yeah, I mean, you know, sometimes there's a long wait period too, depending on when they give their employer notice that they're leaving and when they start. So it could be 2 weeks, which is typically traditional. Other parts of the world, it's 3 months, and the drop rates are insane. And, you know, specifically in the healthcare industry, we see that as well. So there's one thing that we typically advise our clients to do is reach out a couple of times, even if it's with like, hey, check out this cool information or any unique perks or perks about your organization. Again, videos are huge, make it fast, right? So we've been talking about time a lot and keeping it short and concise, but really what's gonna get you the most bang for your buck? Or remind them, right? So if it's 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever that time frame may be, stay in touch. And you can do it in an automated way. So you don't have to be that person on the phone saying, hey, you know, we're so excited to have you start. Or maybe you want their mentor or their manager to welcome them. And so you can create tasks and automate nudges for your current employees as well to reach out to them. Thinking about engagement. So we do a thing called free fun facts, right? So about you. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Maybe you want to share some information about the team or some unique things like, you know, oddly, everybody on my team is really great at cooking or loves to barbecue. You know, just those things that make it feel a little bit more authentic or personal. I think that's huge. But you really, really want to get in front of your competition because you could potentially not only be competing with the current employer, but others as well. So you really want to make it a great experience all the way through that alumni status.
No, excellent, excellent. I don't think anyone wants to try my cooking, so I don't know if that'd be one of my things that I bring up.
Yeah.
But in the interest of time, we've got about 4 minutes left. So kind of want to start to wrap up things here and kind of pose the final question to each of you. So obviously, as we hopefully look, fingers crossed, to a vaccine in 2021, what are some of the things that you're seeing in terms of like returning to quote unquote normal before the pandemic? And, what are some things that you're kind of seeing as the new normal, meaning that it's kind of been forever changed? What do you see that things that are going to be kind of continuing on as we move forward? Tracey, why don't we start with you?
Sure. So, I mean, I wish I had that magic 8-ball just to give me all the answers. But I think a lot of the new norm is that remote worker, right? I know that it's not for every field, but I think we're going to see a lot more of the telemedicine that we're seeing right now in hospitals. We're going to start seeing the remote worker and really finding those soft skills. Can this person perform without a manager, not in an office? Do they have that capability? I always want to identify that. Digital, that has been a big thing that everyone's been talking about. I think a lot of people are moving away from manual processes and going more digital. Another thing that I know we've been talking about is HR tech stacks and integrations. Skill surveys integrated with Hireology. You want to streamline the solutions that you have and make it more simplified so that the communication can be streamlined and everyone has knowledge of what you're doing in an organization. So I think those are the 3 key areas. I know there's many more, but I think those are the 3 key areas that we're seeing.
Sure. No, thank you for that. Michael, what do you got for us?
Well, if Tracey's right, and I think she is, that remote work is here to stay, I really think the use and acceptance of these high technology type assessments are really also here to stay. We talked about the virtual or on-demand type interviews being, one good example of that. And I really do think those are going to be the new norm, right? So as people aren't coming in to a geographical location to work, you're going to need to still meet them at some point somehow. And so phone screens are great and Zoom calls can work, but I think these higher, more automated type products are going to continue to flood the field and only get better from here. So, I'm excited to see where that transitions and in what ways it affects, organizations broadly.
Yeah, absolutely. Danielle, what do you have for us?
So just to piggyback off of what Michael and Tracey said, remote work. So that means that your candidates have different expectations. They expect a fluid, seamless experience. And so you have to think about ways that you can do that. That's not only a great experience for your candidates, but cost effective for you. So I think that's really kind of the new normal and what we're going to see now and in the future.
Excellent. And saving the best for last, Carol, what do you got for those parting words?
I definitely agree with everyone. My answer is going to sound very similar to Michael. I think that remote interviewing is going to be a big piece, especially because I know, something we're hearing in the Q&A is that there's a lot of no-shows and the cost for that. And it's definitely having an asynchronous interview is a great solution around that because you don't have the cost of people showing up to conduct an interview and then your candidates are a no-show. And it can help you gather those information and really see who's still invested in the process without that cost. So I definitely think that's one thing to stay. And I also think, selecting people that are able to work remotely. For example, I know in our medical field in the city I live in, and we actually even have chaplains working remotely right now. And so being able to select people who can, effectively work in that role and still express that empathy, but still work efficiently remotely is definitely something we might continue to see, especially for healthcare.
Absolutely. No, and I love that. It's just kind of continuing to think outside the box and, offer as many solutions as possible to meet people where they are. So, all right, well, we're at time. So I would like to once again, thank everyone on this panel for participating today. Your insights and expertise are obviously, we love that. Thank you so much for, being a part of this and for sharing I know our audience, has found this very enlightening, and obviously appreciate you taking the time to sit with us today. So for our audience, tomorrow we'll have a great session and a CEO fireside chat with Care Academy. So be sure to tune in again tomorrow at 1 p.m. Central, and we will go ahead and see everyone tomorrow. Thank you.
I think so.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, thank you.